Let's see. Christmas at 24 Berryman Avenue in the early 50s. That's 1950 in old money. This is a compilation of early Christmas memories. Early memories may be more of what I think or wished happened as opposed to the actual events, so take this as a guideline as opposed to the actual events. 24 Berryman Avenue was a two-story house with a veranda on the front, small back porch in the back, coal chute on the driveway side. This was before oil and gas furnaces, and heat was by coal furnaces stoked in the basement. Household power was 24 cycle, not 60 like today, and some lights would flicker. Milk was delivered by horse and cart and left at the door. I remember hearing the clip-clop of the horses in the morning and the whistles of the steam trains at night. There was an apartment on each floor. The story was that Mom and Annie Dora sweet-talked the owner into letting them rent the house. Who could resist those two? At that time, Dad had a 1950 blue Meteor and had started work at Auntie's Imperial just down the street. Mom, Dad, and I lived on the first floor with Nipper, a small gray terrier-type dog, while Stan and Dora were upstairs. This was the time when the Brookses, Stan and Dora, and the Halls would go over the river for Sunday brunch or supper. Was this in Lewiston, across that old rickety suspension bridge? Maybe. But I do remember, at Christmas, the Canadian Tire store at the end of St. Paul Street had a huge toy department in the basement. I particularly lusted after the Lionel electric trains and really wanted one for Christmas. When Christmas Day arrived that year, I was up early to see if Santa had been. The cookies and glass of milk were gone, and the stockings were full, and presents were left under the tree, so Santa had been. We opened the presents, but alas, there was no electric train. To say the least, I was a little sad. Uncle Stan and Annie Dora came down from upstairs, and gifts were exchanged. Annie Dora said, "Doug, I think you should help me carry our presents upstairs and then help me carry down some cookies and treats." So upstairs we went. Annie Dora said that the cookies and treats were in the spare bedroom and that I should go and get them. I went in, but instead of cookies and treats, there was a plywood table with an electric train set. Turns out Uncle Maury, who was handy and had tools, had made the folding table. Mom and Dad put everything together with help from Stan and Dora. The engine was a Lionel steam locomotive with a tender, a few cars, and a caboose. The tracks were laid out in an oval and ran through a tunnel. This was a big surprise. Now, I don't remember going to church, but if we did, it would have been St. George's Anglican. After church, we bundled into the Meteor and were off to visit Dad's family. First, Auntie Gwen and Uncle Ab Sandham and their 3 kids in Port Dalhousie. Then, Uncle Lorne and Auntie Dot Chapman and their 2 kids on Lowell Avenue in St. Catharines. You might remember Uncle Lorne. He was a teacher at the Collegiate and had something to do with the rowing club. I think he might have taught history. Then to Meriton to see Uncle Ken and Auntie Leda Hall and their son Greg. Eventually, we ended up at Granny and Grandpa Wallach's on Prospect Avenue. Gifts were given out by Grandpa upstairs in the living room, which was a standing-room-only event as there were so many aunts, uncles, and cousins. This was followed by Christmas supper downstairs in the basement. Homemade wine, kielbasa, poppy seed bread, cabbage rolls, turnip, Brussels sprouts, carrots, green beans, mashed potatoes, stuffing, gravy, turkey, ham, the whole 9 yards, plus baked goods for dessert. A small kids' table was set up in the furnace room just off the main basement room, where the big people sat in rows of covered card tables. It was an event when one graduated from the small kids' table to the big people's table. After Christmas Day, we drove to Burlington to visit Dad's parents, Grandpa Lou and Aunt Lil on Lakeshore Road. They lived in a tidy little brick house. Going to Burlington was always a gamble to see if you could cross the canal before the lift bridge went up. There was no Burlington Skyway back then. Dad never called Aunt Lil Mom, as his mom, Helena, had passed away of tuberculosis when he was quite young. So that was more or less what Christmas was like at 24 Berryman Avenue in the early 1950s, BJB, before Jim and Bob. So Merry Christmas, y'all, from the West Kootenays. Love, Doug and Barb.